There are few works of art that transcend the confines of their medium. The Caretaker, also known as Leland Kirby, is quite the unique artist, to put it lightly. His work is truly inspired and unlike anything that has really ever been made before or since. Today, I want to take a closer look at two of his standout albums, those being An Empty Bliss Beyond This World and Everywhere at the End of Time. These two in particular have always been very special to me. Their energies are obviously very specific and carefully crafted. Like most of his work, they are meant to represent each stage of dementia, although An Empty Bliss Beyond This World is much shorter than its absurdly ambitious successor. These albums occupy a realm far beyond mere music. They are masterful explorations of memory, nostalgia, and the fragile, transient nature of human life and experience. But their unique energy lies in the ability to evoke a deeply personal yet emotionally resonant feel with its listeners. These albums may be centered around dementia, but at least in my opinion, they're just immensely calming and take me into a world that no other medium ever has. To achieve the unique sounds put on display here, Kirby sampled old 1920s and 1930s ballroom records, then layered them with an intentional sense of decay, looping certain phrases and abruptly cutting others. The result is a collage of sound that feels both familiar and distant, like trying to grasp a memory that perpetually slips just out of reach. In particular, some of my favorite tracks from An Empty Bliss Beyond This World, such as All You Are Going to Want to Do Is Get Back There, The Bet's Delay, and Camaraderie at Arm's Length, evoke a dreamlike melancholy, as if you're stuck in a state of reverie. The cracking of the vinyl, the lush yet deteriorated melodies, and the subtle distortions create an atmosphere of haunting beauty. This music doesn't just play, it lingers, weaving itself into the listener's own memories. But what makes these albums so special are their relatability in a sense. It doesn't matter if you've ever heard a 1930s ballroom tune before, the music connects to the archetype of nostalgia itself, the longing for something that once was, or perhaps never truly was. These records invite you to sit in that liminal space between clarity and obfuscation, evoking emotions you honestly might have not realized you carried. While the albums are undeniably beautiful, they are also profoundly melancholic. In a way, they force you to confront the impermanence of memory and identity. The repetitive loops mimic the cyclical nature of thought and the confusion often experienced in cognitive decline. Yet, within this darkness, there is an inexplicable sense of peace, a kind of acceptance, and that's precisely why I love these projects so much. Each track flows into the next with an unpredictability that mirrors the disorientation of fading memory. The occasional moments of clarity, an unaltered melody, or perfectly looping phrase shine like bursts of light in the fog, but these moments are fleeting and quickly revert back to the confusion. Everywhere at the End of Time is the far more complex album, which was released in several different stages over the course of multiple years. In total, the entire album runs for over 6 hours. These stages all gradually become more declined, capturing the full arc of dementia, from the comforting reminiscences of stage 1 to the fractured chaos and utter void of the later stages. For this reason, I only ever really listened to stage 1, as I find it genuinely calming and pleasant, but that's what it's supposed to do. It lures you in, and one by one, just as a patient with dementia would experience, the music itself becomes fractured, distorted, and broken as the album progresses. Listening to the whole record in one take is a completely monstrous task, and as impressive as the album is, I don't know if I'd ever recommend actually listening to the whole thing in one sitting, as it does its job a bit too well, and might actually make you yourself feel like you are somewhat experiencing the horrible illness of dementia. Kirby deserves all the credit he gets for this album, as he certainly has one of the most creative and dedicated minds in music. Analyzing the album itself, it begins with stage 1, a serene and nostalgic introduction that captures you in a warm embrace of familiarity. Some of my favorite tracks here, such as Late Afternoon Drifting, The Loves of My Entire Life, My Heart Will Stop in Joy, and Into Each Other's Eyes, exemplify this stage's serenity. These pieces are lush, melodic, and intact, left mostly untouched except for subtle crackles and a hint of age, which are all signs of what's to come. It's Just a Burning Memory, the opening track, sets the tone for this initial phase. Its melody, sampled from Heartaches by Al Bowley, is melancholic yet comforting. The repetition of its looping motif evokes a feeling of gentle recollection of cherished memories, those moments of clarity when one can still retrieve the past with vivid detail. This stage represents the early onset of dementia, where memories are accessible and still provide solace. Stage 1's peaceful energy is integral to the album's narrative. It's a false sense of security, a bittersweet prelude to the chaos that lies ahead. The polished melodies here serve as a stark contrast to the disarray and fragmentation of later stages, making their eventual degradation all the more harrowing. In stage 2, tracks begin to lose their structure. What Does It Matter How My Heart Breaks is a perfect example of this. The melodies are still discernible, but there's a sense of distance, as if the listener is hearing them through a sort of mental fog or from the end of a long hallway. Loops are slightly uneven, introducing a worrying feeling of unease. phase. This stage represents the awareness of memory loss, the bittersweet agony of knowing that clarity is slipping away. By stage 3, the music becomes fractured. Standout tracks here would be And Heart Breaks and Back There Benjamin. These tracks are disjointed, with abrupt shifts and unnatural loops. Stage 3 is widely regarded as one of the most impactful segments of the project due to its emotional depth and the way it conveys the progression of dementia. Stage 4 marks a major turning point. The transition into the post-awareness phase is incredibly jarring and feels like a massive wake-up call. The music becomes almost unrecognizable, like a swirling storm of noise and fragmented sounds. Post-awareness confusions is a good example here. The songs here in Stage 4 can hardly even be considered music anymore, as they abandon melody entirely, immersing the listener in a disorienting soundscape. Here, identity is all but lost, replaced by an overwhelming sense of isolation and dread. Stage 4 is crucial because it marks the point of no return in the dementia journey. It bridges the gap between lingering humanity of early stages and the emptiness of the final stages. It makes stage 5 and 6 more impactful because it establishes the listener's descent into the chaotic nature of the album. Without stage 4, the contrast and narrative arc of this record would just not feel as profound. Stage 5 is marked by overwhelming chaos, where the music becomes almost completely unrecognizable. Fragmented sounds, distorted loops, and eerie dissonant echoes dominate, reflecting a near total collapse of coherent memory and self-awareness. This complete collapse of identity is haunting to say the least. Previous stages relied on warped versions of nostalgic memory, such as It's Just a Burning Memory, but stage 5 abandons most traces of these recognizable sounds entirely. This mirrors the experience of someone with advanced dementia, where even once familiar concepts and people may no longer be accessible. The chaotic textures place you in a state of sensory overwhelm, which really give you a glimpse into the disoriented and fragmented world of someone experiencing the later stages of Alzheimer's. The song Advanced Plague Entanglements has this absolutely beautiful but equally as harrowing moment of clarity before snapping right back into chaos. Stage 6 represents the final embrace. It's both devastating and cathartic. The noise and chaos recede into near silence, leaving faint echoes and empty space. The closing track, Place in the World Fades Away, is a haunting conclusion, a gentle fade into nothingness. It captures the void of advanced dementia where selfhood is extinguished, but it also suggests a form of peace by the patient finally being released from the grip of Alzheimer's. The album covers for each stage of Everywhere at the End of Time are equally as impressive as the music itself. Created by Ivan Seal, these are just as integral to the experience as the music itself. The 6 abstract paintings that serve as the covers for each stage are not merely decorative. They are essential extensions of the album's narrative, showing off a visual representation of memory and identity. One of the most remarkable aspects of these covers is how they visually echo the progression of the album. Each stage's art is carefully crafted to reflect the thematic and emotional tone of its corresponding music. The cover for stage 1 feels grounded. The object depicted, while abstract, is still recognizable. It reflects the peacefulness and accessibility of memory in the earlier stages of dementia, where recollections are vivid but tinged with the faint awareness of fragility. It looks to be some sort of magazine unfolding itself, and it only gets more confusing and complex from here. Stage 2's cover introduces more distortion and fragmentation. The forms are less clear, the colors more muted, and the texture rougher. It reflects the growing unease in the music, where melodies begin to falter and fade, and the image clearly looks like a potted plant with dying flowers. But if you look closely at the handles, they seem to vaguely represent two people, a man and a woman. The stage 3 cover just feels chaotic, with jagged edges and unsettling shapes. It mirrors the increasing dissonance and confusion in the music. This stage's art, in my opinion, perfectly captures the emotional turmoil of losing one's grip on reality. It looks to be an overgrown plant with multiple random things going on among the leaves. The stage 4 cover features a distorted, fragmented object that is difficult to identify, but very clearly human in a way. It's an almost melting mass of shape and textures. The colors are muted, with a palette dominated by pale, washed out tones and streaks of dark, almost decayed hues. The object appears unstable, as though it's collapsing or disintegrating, set against a nondescript, stale background that gives absolutely no clear context or grounding. Stage 5 is the most complex piece of art in the album, as it could be interpreted as a million different things, and just like the music in this stage, it's distorted and feels vaguely familiar, but you just can't place your finger on what it is. All I can really grab out of this picture is a small staircase the figure seems to be resting on. Lastly, the most prominent cover is absolutely the one used for stage 6. It's just cardboard sitting upright with some blue tape on it. It's abstract to the point of formlessness, symbolizing how memory and personality have completely unraveled. The absence of structure reflects the individual's complete detachment from reality, but this is still beyond confusing and complex, even with the innate simplicity of it. Everywhere at the End of Time also formed many fan albums, and I thought I'd just give a shout out to one of my favorite ones, which is Everywhere in the Beginning of Nowhere by the Care Bear. I'll link the album in the description if you want to give it a listen, which I highly recommend as it's incredibly impressive. Everywhere at the End of Time is not merely an album, it is a living, breathing work of art that redefines what music can achieve. Its uniqueness lies in its ability to bridge the gap between sound and experience, turning abstract concepts like memory and decay into something tangible and deeply felt. Through its brilliance, ambition, and devastating beauty, Everywhere at the End of Time secures its place as one of the most special, unique, and impressive creations in the history of modern art. It's an experience that lingers long after the final notes fade, echoing in the vast silent spaces of memory.